Baruchel.
Yeah.
Isn't that what most people say? Or some people go Baruchel.
I get Baruchel.
Baruchel.
Very few. Very seldom.
Baruchel.
That's how it should be said.
When you do the junket in Israel.
That's exactly right.
Baruchel.
The Israelis don't believe that that's actually my last name.
Really?
Well, because it's fucking super full on.
Yeah, it's usually, that's like the Jewish version of a name.
A Filipina name.
Right, right.
Rosario Crucifixia.
Yeah, like my Hebrew name. It's similar, like my name is Marc Maron, but then when you go get your Hebrew name, it's Michael David Reuben Baruch. It's like a whole legacy of...
My friend Richard had the worst one because there's nothing Hebrew about Richard, so his Hebrew name was Chanach.
Chanach? No, they just make them up. It's close.
Sounds like it.
But wait, are you Jewish?
Half.
Well, which half?
My dad. My dad was, so technically I'm nothing, because in Judaism it's what your mom is, and in Catholicism it's what your dad is.
Right.
And the two cancel each other out for me.
So, that's good. That's freedom.
I suppose so, or crippling guilt on both ends.
Did you get that, though?
Oh, I have a really shitty joke that I've been telling since I was a teenager.
Good. Well, that's a good setup. Boy, let's get on with it.
It's there's two very different, very potent forms of guilt. One makes me feel guilty for masturbating, the other for not returning phone calls.
Good, yeah. Boy, did you do stand-up, or you just wrote that one day and you're like...
Just full of chutzpah.
Yeah, this is a keeper.
Yes,
this is how I'm going to do it.
It summed it all up pretty well.
But there... A lot of times, it took me a while to realize that there is a huge Canadian Jewish community.
Big time.
Yeah,
big time.
And it's old school too.
Yeah, no, it is. It's been there since technically in Montreal and Toronto since end of the 19th century. And
right, when there's trade, there's Jews.
That's
it's like, what? We can make money on fur?
And here's like a morbid statistic is slightly morbid, which is Montreal, probably not so much anymore, but for a long time, Montreal has world's third highest population of Holocaust survivors.
That's because that was one of the places they went.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. Israel's hot.
That's it.
Let's get on this boat.
That's exactly right.
It must be.
And our cousins are in New York. That's the idea.
So there's the port in Montreal, port in Ellis Island.
That's exactly right.
Israel.
No, those are the three options. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. But they've been there since. Oh, so you're saying since that or before that?
I think before that as well.
Usually when there's fur trading and there's
that's right.
There's money to be made through exchange.
Well, it's like when you're talking about Jewish diaspora, which one? There's fucking
that's right,
thousands of them because for
Spanish Inquisition, the Purge, but sometimes they just left. I think.
Yeah, and Spanish. So and so on my dad's side, the Baruchels, we are Sephardic, so we're not of that sort of traditional what most people that
Eastern European.
Yeah, no, not at all. No, we were from Italy originally, and then chased out of Italy and settled in Algeria and Palestine.
Really?
And Egypt, and we were in Alexandria, Egypt, for generations, which used to be the world capital of Sephardic Jews.
Wow, you did the homework. You did the research.
I'm just a huge history nerd.
This was passed down to you.
Yes,
Alexandria, Egypt.
Yep.
That's where you guys hung out.
That's right. Yeah. Up until what's his face, Nasser. Yeah.
Oh, that long.
Yeah. And the story in our family was that one day we'd been there for God knows how long, and then one day we were just sort of told, you own nothing, you're not welcome here, get the hell out.
Yeah, well, sadly, I'm waiting for that day here, so I'm hoping.
Boy, yeah, I know. Tell me about it, eh?
So I'm like, there's all these things. It's so funny. I've been talking about it on stage. Like, there were like I always liked going to Canada, but there's a moment as an American the first time you go to Toronto or Montreal where you're like, well, it's kind of like America, but there's no edge to it. It's a little slow. It's kind of like there's no anxiety, there's no panic, just day-to-day life. There was a shot, when you first go to Montreal or Toronto, you're like, why is that guy just sitting outside on a bench at 10:30? What kind of crazy? There are people walking, but now I'm sort of like, sounds good. Sounds relaxing.
Yeah, it is. Although that's the thing. A lot of our our political issues and all of our sort of big debates don't make it down here. So the sort of narrative of Canada as the big pastoral, huge version of Minnesota and Vermont, which it is in a lot of way, but it also, you don't know how the sausage gets made, and we have our own issues.
No, I'm sure
we're divisive about enough stuff. Yeah,
especially in Montreal, right?
Yes, and also there's like our big shame, the big cross to bear in Canada, is our relationship with our Native community.
Right.
Which I'm constantly amazed that doesn't seem to be a narrative down here at all. America seems to have made peace with the fact that they
I don't know if they've made peace. I think years ago they're like, we gave them the casinos. So they're somehow they've
so it's okay. So everything's fine.
Yeah,
so,
they got money coming back in. How much do they need? No, it's a heinous part of history. And,
it is.
But as a national storyline, it should be more.
That's all and it's because it's all consuming in Canada. It's a part of our narrative. It's in the headlines every single day. There's a multi-million-dollar inquiry happening right now into missing and murdered Indigenous women because, like, if you're born Native and female in Canada, you're 6 times more likely to die a violent death.
Really?
Yeah.
At the hands of who?
Well, take your pick. Yeah. There's a massive cultural disconnect, and Canada, finally, we're owning up to it and doing what needs to be done, at least to explore and try to figure out how we can make stuff better. For so long, though, I suspect we didn't.
Yeah.
Because it went against our superiority thing of thinking we're better than America.
Right.
And this was the sort of dirty little secret that didn't dovetail with the rest of our branding as the sort of liberal North.
But how much of how integrated is that community? Do they still, are there still large, populations, throughout were they subjugated to ghettoization and reservations?
Yeah, that's so precisely right. So there's a great deal of them live in reservations, which is, listen, I'm not from that community, so I can't speak to it, and I know people from those communities who prefer living there than they would in the cities. But also, there are cities like Winnipeg where you have a marginalized, ghettoized population of natives in the urban cities, in the urban community, and it's like, it's this, my friend put it perfectly, my friend Jacob Tierney put it to me 10 years ago. He said, if white people were dying at the rate that natives are dying, there would be $1 billion inquest into figuring out what the hell is wrong.
Sure, of course, yeah. It's sort of like now they're going to do a sort of national emergency over the opioid epidemic. Now, unlike the crack epidemic,
right? It's funny how that happens. Eh?
It's fighting the good fight is a tough.
They don't
thing.
make it easy nowadays.
No, it's fucking scary. But everybody seems to love your prime minister. I don't know him, but I feel like like in my fantasies, if things got so awful here that I like he publicly he presents a persona like I could probably call that guy now that I know Jay.
That's right. That's exactly it. Yeah. No, he's. I'm an avowed fan, and I come by it honestly. I have voted Liberal Party pretty much since I was 18.
Yeah.
My parents did, my grandparents did, and my mom was a huge fan of his father. And I think
his wife was his father's wife was pretty.
Yes, she got into some trouble.
She did,
Maggie with the Rolling Stones,
with Mick Jagger.
Yeah, and then Pierre dated went to the Oscars, I think, with Barbra Streisand.
Did he? Now is Maggie his mom?
Yep.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's
Is she still around?
I don't know.
I wonder.
Actually, I'm not sure.
The old man's gone, right?
Yes, he is. He passed away. Yeah, and that was a big sad sort of national day of mourning because that's our longest serving prime minister. He had 3 terms for us.
Like I remember not knowing anything about politics, but knowing him.
Yeah, he was one of these guys. He was erudite and dressed super well and very charismatic and just like. And captured that sort of 60s, 70s kind of Renaissance man zeitgeist.
Sure, he was a groovy guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Back when the New York intelligentsia meant something.
That's
when most of culture was dictated by what was going on the Dick Cavett show.
That's exactly precisely. And then he rolls into the Oscars wearing sandals and no socks. Like the guy was a gangster.
Nice.
Yeah.
At least he didn't wear a Canadian tuxedo, which I do occasionally.
Yeah, we all have to every once in a while.
So now. You live there still.
I do.
And that's a choice.
Yep.
You must have been here for a while.
I mean, I've been coming down here on and off since I was 18.
You never lived here?
No, that's not true. I've done stints, but it was never home.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
You got brothers and sisters?
One little sister.
Oh, you got a little sister.
Yeah.
And what are your parents? What's their business? What's their racket?
My dad passed in 2004.
Sorry, buddy.
Oh, thank you. But before he passed, he was he got most of this out of his system before I was born. But yeah, my dad was a big, he was a hood. He was a drug dealer. And
really?
Yeah. And went to prison the whole 9 yards.
Really?
And when I was a kid, though, he sort of had stopped that stuff for the most part, as much as he could. But all of the friends that he'd bring over, all the adults in my house were all guys that are no longer in Canada, or if they're in Canada, they're in cemeteries.
Well, see that for me, but I've learned better. But there's part of me that kind of stereotypically goes a Jewish drug dealer. There's I have that moment,
right? But
there's Jewish gangsters.
Yes,
Jews do a lot of things.
Meyer Lansky.
Business is business. Yeah,
Meyer Lansky would have
helped
something
design
to say,
the American mob.
Yeah, no shit.
Sure,
no
Longies
shit.
Willman. There's a long history of
big
Jewish
time.
criminals.
Big time. And my dad, although my dad really, he didn't run with
Henry Kissinger, another. Famous Jewish criminal.
Woody Allen, famous Jewish criminal. But my father ran with the West End gang, which is an Irish gang in the west side of the city, and it all came from. My dad had the fight in him. He moved there. His family moved to Canada when he was 4 years old, and they didn't move
from Egypt.
From France. They had gone from Egypt to France to Montreal, and they didn't move to one of the great Jewish communities in Montreal.
Yeah.
They moved to a very French neighborhood, where they were the only Jews on the block.
Is that where he met your mom?
He met mom at a nightclub. Fucking hell. And then they had dated for 6 weeks, and then someone dared them to get married, and they fucked off to Montego Bay, Jamaica, and got married. And then 6 months after that, mom's visiting him at prison.
Oh my God.
She was this country girl, and she had only been in the city for a year or two, and then all of a sudden she's the drug dealer's wife.
And she stayed together. They stayed together.
So roof over her head and food in my belly, and
no kidding. So he did a stint in the can,
yeah.
And then he
tried to go legit and sold microchips, but
legit microchips.
Yes, as legit
as an ex-drug dealer, the microchip business, going right from drugs to microchips, already suspect.
He'd sell anything. That was my dad, and then on their weekends they would sell antiques, restore and sell antiques. My father was just a chazer, and I grew up in a real haggle culture, and my dad could just he would claim he could sell sand to an Arab, was his term.
Yeah. Huh? So he was in this French Canadian neighborhood, which and that's where he sort of took to the streets.
Yeah, and started fighting. He started dealing at 13 or 14.
What?
First pot, then cocaine.
Okay.
And cocaine's where he made and lost most of it.
In the 70s,
yeah.
80s?
Yeah. And he was the guy with all the party favors, and mom was the model on his arm, and they just cut the line and went to the nightclub. Disco assholes.
So he probably knew Maggie Trudeau.
They definitely crossed paths. I hear all these, I would get these snapshot anecdotes from 70s Coke Montreal discos of Tony Bennett and Leslie Nielsen coming through and all this weird shit.
I remember your dad. That kind of stuff?
Yeah, and
he was a character.
That's it. And then they fucked off to Florida, Tallahassee, Florida for a year.
Tallahassee of all places.
Yeah, there was
not even beach or nice.
It was close to Columbia. And
so before the shit went down.
And literally the first pet that I grew up with, our German Shepherd when I was a kid, her name was Coca.
Yeah, come on.
I swear to God.
He was really in.
I swear to God.
Not hiding much.
Both of them. No. Difference is, and my namesake, who I'm fucking named after, just speaks to this awful life that they were living. But, because Mom, when she found out she was pregnant, that day on, cold turkey, nothing, hadn't done anything, and not since, didn't look back since.
Oh, she stopped doing
right away
drinking and booze.
She was
no drugs.
This is it.
Yeah.
My father did not. And I'm Jay, but my real Jay for me is short for Jonathan. My name is Jonathan, and I asked Mom, "Who am I? Am I named after somebody?"
Yeah.
And I might as well not be. It's pretty fucking arbitrary who I'm named after. Do you remember a TV show with Robert Wagner called Heart to Heart?
Yeah, sure.
And his character's name was Jonathan Hart.
No. That's who you're named after? And then it was the two of them. They were like a couple. What was her name?
They're like Private Eyes or something?
Private Eyes, yeah. I kind of remember that.
So that's who I'm named after, is Jonathan fucking Hart.
A character on
that
TV
Robert
show.
Wagner played for, what, 2 seasons?
Yeah. That's bizarre.
It's awful. And had I been a girl, I'd have been jazz, and my parents hate jazz music. So put that, so that's
that's what your sister's name is?
No, thank God, she's Taylor.
Taylor.
She got a normal one.
All right, well, that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
So did he die of natural causes?
No, he had an overdose of 49.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Of what?
Well, in the his sort of nightly cocktail would be, do you know Dilaudids?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So he
Hardcore.
was, Dilaudids and vodka, and he would he'd do a pint of vodka every night. And
so he was gone.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
man. So that disease, alcoholism, addiction.
It's a big one, and
49's young.
And it's something I know a lot about, and I have very strong and specific opinions about it. But
you're lucky you didn't get it.
I did. I am. And it was 50-50 because, so Dad's family are all drunks.
Really?
Mom's family, strangely, the Irish side of me, no one, there's this really crippling alcohol allergy that my mom has, my grandmother had.
So they're companions to drunks.
Yes. And
you got some of the codependent Irish.
That's it. And I had 50% chance of being allergic to liquor or an alcoholic. And I, thank God, inherited Mom's terrible tolerance.
And do you find yourself dating troubled people?
Jesus Christ. I mean, there's no more than anyone else, I suspect.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Well, no, I mean, I know it because I'm sober 18 years.
Yeah, mazel tov.
Thank you. Just the other day.
That's amazing.
But, the mindset of it, how you're brought up and what you grow, your part of your brain looks to recreate that at every turn. Sure. And it's hard to shake it because it feels right. Yeah. And a lot of times when you come from crazy, you're going to find yourself in crazy.
Yeah. If only for familiarity's sake.
Well, but it happens at such a deep level, you can't even figure it out. Like sometimes they seem normal for a month or two.
No, I know. Yeah. And especially, this industry has a lot of people that one of the first lessons I learned when I first started coming down here was that there's a difference between being good at chatting and being a good person. And there's a lot of people here that are very good at talking. And when you come from a normal place, meeting someone that is has the gift of gab, you're like, oh, cool, I can connect with this person. Well, fucking everybody down here is good at talking. Yeah. And so
working the angle.
It took me a year before I was like, oh, they can string a sentence together. That doesn't mean they have a conscience.
Yeah, they seem to like me. That doesn't mean they do.
That means garbage. Total fuck all. Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking for what they can get.
Always.
And your mom stayed with them till the end?
No. She got into her wits' end about 7 years before he passed.
And what does she do?
Well, she was a homemaker for most of my life, and then when my folks split up. And my dad didn't have a pot to piss in, so didn't have any child support to throw our way whatsoever. And I started kind of paying our bills at 14.
No kidding, you were that child actor.
Yep.
Yeah.
But always with the caveat, my mom she made it abundantly clear, I do not depend on my son.
Right.
We're a family. You have the money now. We'll take care of you. But by the way, you want to stop tomorrow, you stop tomorrow. She said it to me very specifically. She says, we do poor very well.
Yeah.
Okay? So we will go back to being poor very easily. And my mom attested.
No guilt in that?
None whatsoever. No, the opposite.
But in the back of your mind, you're like, we may do it well, but
no, I don't mind it. I because there's everything's fun and everything's a treasure. And I grew up with very little money in our house.
Sporadic money.
Yeah, if any.
Yeah.
And necessity is the mother of invention. So I had a much more interesting, rewarding childhood than a lot of my friends who grew up with not a single care in the world.
Right.
And Mom told me at 9 that no one's going to give me anything. I remember saying to her, because I'd see all these American movies that filled my head with nonsense that I turned 16 and my parents will get me a car or some stupid thing. And so I said to her, when I'm 16, I get a license, you'll get me a car? She said, absolutely not. She's like, if you decide you want a car, I'll help you figure out how to save your money. I was like, oh, but you'll send me to university. She said, no. Once again, if you decide at 18 you want to go to university, I'll help you figure out how to save your money. But I'm not sending you anything. You're going to be a grown-up. You'll buy it yourself. And thank fuck I got that, because so many people I know got out of university with this god-awful sense of entitlement that they had done their 4 years and wasted $200,000 or however fucking much money they spent.
Right.
And now they feel that they're owed something. And I've never
without getting any skills necessarily.
Right.
At school.
Or you know, getting dirty and fucking suffering for it. And because they think school's suffering enough, right? And I just always was raised to know big bad world. You got no one to trust but your friends and your family, and no one's going to give anything to you.
Yeah.
And it's seen me in good stead.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good thing to learn. You know, that this idea that everybody can be rich has
horse
really
shit.
Well, it is.
Horse shit.
It's horse shit, and also like I think it diminishes people's engagement.
Agreed.
With trying to do something.
Yes. When I was exactly right. The old fucking thing was, what do you want? What's the house you want, the car you want, the life you want? Yeah. How hard and long do you have to work to get there?
Yeah.
Do that. And now, as my friend points out, every morning someone's on Facebook, sees their friend's TV or car or backyard, or like, oh, I want that. And that's fine. But rather than the metric of how can I work to get that, it's, how can I have this tomorrow?
Yeah, how can I get credit? How can I get... Well, yeah. I don't know what I wanted. Like, I just wanted to feel okay.
Right. Yeah, that's fucking a perfectly reasonable thing,
I'm
man.
living in a crumbling house. I could probably get a better house now, but I don't even want that. I just want to be okay.
Yeah, normal.
But yeah, I know I guess it's really hard for people to know what the hell they want to do when they don't have to do it.
Yeah, very, very, very true.
Like, that's the weird thing. Like, people who have to fucking do shit.
You figure it out.
You figure it out.
Because your other option is homelessness or death.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, honestly, or living on the dole for the rest of your life. And like, and I just, it bums me out that people aren't, every generation has less staying power than the one before it, you know, and
more access and more convenience
yes,
and more,
yes,
you know, like distractions.
Yep.
And yeah, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around all of it, because I mean, you're not exactly saying pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You're saying like, oh, just get engaged somehow, find
do
something,
give a shit,
yeah,
and work. That's the other thing.
Or if you're not going to give a shit and you don't know what you want to do, try and help some other people.
Right. Or if not, keep your fucking mouth shut and just sit there then, and know that you figured it out. You're gaming the system in some way, but there's this awful need of like self-branding that maybe it's a function of social media culture,
right? But we're also in a specific world that it nurtures a certain delusion on behalf of people who want to be involved in it.
Very true.
So there's a lot of self-branding, and those brands aren't taking.
Not at all. No kidding.
But there's no one to tell them they're not. They're like, I got 200 likes on this. I'm like, all right. So
and I honestly, I think this is going to sound like an exaggeration, but I really think that has terrible repercussions on like discourse, because I've seen this awful thing. I'm someone who would most of my beliefs would probably be described as liberal, and I am constantly offended at how people that are like supposed to be ideological allies of mine don't actually try to convince people that are opposed to them. Yeah. They just scream their opinion louder.
Or get defensive.
Yeah, get defensive. Or
call them names.
Hope they get that retweet. That I got that stinging dig in there. Yeah. I won that fight.
Yeah.
Well, you fucking didn't, because the country and culture are suffering because of it.
Yeah.
I firmly believe your goal should be to try to convince this person of your beliefs.
Yeah, bridge the gap.
Right?
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to do that is by trying your best to not get their back up, and to find common ground. You grew up like me. You're trying to pay your taxes and feed yourself, right? Mm-hmm. We're doing the same thing.
But in defense of some of that, you don't want to start a DM relationship with kill all Jews.
No. Obviously, there's a scale. There's a tier system. There's a triage system to it. You know.
You don't want at Hitler is right is not going to be your friend.
No. At coming race war is not the guy that I need to be. Although, to be honest, an argument could be made that, like, if I don't try to convince that man of my, or at least try to plant the seed,
find some common ground,
right? Then that's how bad shit happens, and I know that it works. I don't often get into political arguments on Twitter because I believe that
I don't get on. I got off it altogether. I just use it for promotion and occasionally answer some questions.
I get it, and for me it was, I believe that if you share a viewpoint you should have the patience to then defend it. If you don't have that in you and the appetite, keep it to yourself. That's why we vote behind a curtain, is my opinion.
Right.
And once in a while, I get into it. And I had said something last year during the American election. I was quite pissed at the Muslim ban that he was trying to run on.
Yeah.
And I called him a fucking brown shirt on Twitter. And of course, that opened up a whole hell of beans on me.
The army of brown shirts.
The army of brown shirts.
The army of unfuckable hate nerds.
The Sturm Abteilung came at me en masse. And what I was so mad about was the Jewish people that tried to call me a traitor to my people for saying that. And I would have these sort of very kind of Netanyahu...
Anti-Muslim Jewish people.
Exactly. And they would accuse me of betraying my ethnicity. And I got bloody mad because I said, no, it's because of my ethnicity. Because my parents and grandparents and people that looked like me and had my surname have been fucking marginalized and painted as the big bad other for the better part of 500 years. 500, fuck that. 2,000 years, 3,000 years.
Right.
That's why it behooves us. We should know fucking better.
Yeah.
That's where it comes from. How dare you? Fuck that. And that pisses me the fuck off.
Well, yeah, and all the triangulation just mutes everything.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Echo chambers screaming at each other.
Yeah, and it just, but like that whole thing where you can't, like there's within each subgroup, there are subgroups and there are divisions,
Yep.
You know, on the left, you know, on the right.
Yep.
But when the left starts to break apart, you know, it really kind of continues to fragment.
Yep.
To where there's just like a group of two people that
that's
are
it.
really against glue. Yeah. You know, like, you know.
That's right. And very, very grossed out and offended anytime someone mentions glue.
Exactly. But yeah, it's hard to get on the same page. So, like, but you weren't brought up politically active.
Oh, actually, I was. No, in a big way. Yeah.
Well, what about, like, what was your relationship with your grandparents? I mean, your father's parents, they must have had some ideological kind of angle.
Well, yeah, big time. So my dad's mom converted to Judaism. She was a French woman from Normandy that met my grandpapa and got married and converted. So before she was Jewish, she was a child in Normandy when the Germans conquered it.
Oh my God.
And then she became Jewish.
Yeah.
So they had very strong opinions about that stuff. You know, like we were never a German car family.
A lot of converts are really Jewish.
Oh yeah, pride of the convert is what they call it.
Because they put the work in.
It's like nobody from New York likes New York as much as people that just moved there.
Right.
All my friends from there are like, yeah, it's a great town. It's where I grew up, but it's just a city.
Yeah.
Everyone that moved there thinks oh my God, have you tried this place?
Yeah.
And it's just so freeing. I can walk anywhere. Right. You know.
So no German cars.
No German cars. And so on that side, and then on Mom's side, my granddad was a career soldier, and was then in one of the first UN peacekeeping missions in Cyprus. And like I said, and like a great deal of my uncles and cousins on my mom's side, all military. Most of my mom's sisters married soldiers, and so I grew up in a very sort of on that side incredibly patriotic belief system. Because like my Uncle Ron, in addition to being a soldier, he was a Mountie for 35 years. He guarded Her Majesty the Queen as well as Pope John Paul II. And this is like a big point of pride in our family.
Yeah.
And so we have seen Canada as ours and ours to serve for generations.
Right.
And I'm probably imbuing a bit of romance on it because my mom's family were just poor and soldiers are good poor people jobs.
Yeah.
But there was always a sense of patriotism and honor to it. And it was like my great lump in my throat, the great shame in my life is that I never joined the Army.
Really?
And never went to Royal Military Cottage in Kingston. College.
Yeah.
Royal Military College in Kingston. It was something that from 3 years old, I said, Mom, I want to be a soldier like Uncle Doug and
you felt the
Uncle
need
Ron.
to serve.
And Mom would be like, and having grown up in that culture, having seen like the good side of it with my granddad, but maybe some of the bad side of it as well.
Yeah.
She wanted to keep me as far away from as possible. And then we moved back to Quebec. We left Quebec in 88. Anglos moved to Toronto like a lot of them did. We moved back to Quebec in 93. There was a provincial election in 94 and a referendum in 95. When we moved back to Montreal, everyone was telling my father, you're going the wrong way down the 401. And within a year of us getting back to Montreal, my father started his own political party with two of his friends. And so I at 12, 13, I was watching my dad on the debate circuit. And
he's a real hustler, huh? What was his political party based on?
So it was an issue party. They didn't expect to get any seats whatsoever. It was purely they wanted to make sure that everyone was aware what the true issue in this election was. Was that
it about secession?
And so, and that, for whatever reason, that wasn't the biggest narrative at that point. And so Dad's party, the Canada exclamation mark party, was there to debate and bandy about this idea to everyone that if you elect this party, you can expect a referendum inside of a year. And so I watched Dad, learned how to debate, and then was on the debate team myself, but I watched this, I had a very grassroots, vital introduction into Canadian politics, and then so fucking grassroots that, so my dad's party didn't have a pot to piss in. He made his own posters. He literally just went to the fucking metro station, got in the photo booth, took the photo that looked the least like Saddam Hussein, because my father's very Sephardic and looked very much like Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
He then went to the photocopy store, made up a bunch, and then staple gunned them to trees.
Sure.
Everyone else was tying them to light posts. And so, in like very progressive lefty Montreal, so we
can't staple shit to trees.
And at a certain point, we saw these people writing, "Thanks for killing the tree, asshole." All this little like bubble writing. Yeah, it was amazing.
Well, it's interesting in the haze of dubious employment.
Yeah.
Your father found it to take it upon himself to create a political party.
Very smart man. That's what it was. Just like a fiercely intelligent man.
Did he did his debating and presence, provoke anything like in dialogue around the issue?
Definitely. And he was asked to join one of the bigger parties because my dad could always fucking argue better than anybody. My dad liked fighting, period.
Yeah.
Whether it was a fist fight or an argument, he just had the fight in him, and he was fucking good at it. And so he was asked to join the Canadian Quebec version of the Progressive Conservative Party, turned them down. But yeah, no, I learned so much, and it made me understand that these institutions are ours.
Right.
There was never a disconnect.
Right.
You know what I mean? The capital never felt far away. And I posit that that's America's biggest problem, is the average taxpayer voter feels a billion miles away from the capital.
Yeah, but some of that has to do with, I don't think it's intentional.
No.
I think there's just a disconnect.
There's a massive disconnect.
That these people actually do anything.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why there's always a kernel of truth in anything, in any bad lie. And so the one thing that righties and lefties in the States can both agree on is the system doesn't work. That's the one thing that everyone says.
But they also, outside of people gaming the system and mobilizing people who may not know better, they don't realize that it's their system.
They should own, and they own it.
Yeah.
You know what I've never heard? This was a very telling thing, because the time that I was in the States the most consistently was from 2000 through 2005, which is a very colorful era.
Yeah.
And something that I constantly heard that always made my spider senses tingle was when I heard all these people talk about W and say, we have to support the president. We're at war. We have to support the president.
Right.
And I was like, he's not the fucking God Emperor. He's your employee.
And the weird thing is that this is the most mind blowing thing I learned recently. That I can't remember his last name, but he used to work for McCain. He's a pundit. He's on the shows now. Mm-hmm. But he said that when Nixon resigned, he still had like a 29% approval rate.
Fuck. Yeah.
So there's always going to be
100%.
Those people do you believe that the president's the president?
Yeah, dyed in the wool, no matter what.
Yeah. So what made you get into the acting?
Oh, really a super simple thing. My dad found a brochure for like a once a week kids acting class when I was 12.
Your dad's he's working the angle.
And so I started taking these courses, and I auditioned for a student film that these kids were making, and they couldn't afford to pay anybody, and I got the gig, and I met a pro actor who was doing a favor on that movie, recommended me to their agent, and Mom said to me, "You want to go to film school? You want to be a director?" Which is what I've wanted since I was 9.
Yeah.
She said, "This is the best film school in the world," and so literally every day on set since I'm 12 has been film school for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what were your first? Because we were in a movie together.
Were we?
Yeah. I was in Almost Famous.
Holy fuck!
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Another bit part like mine?
Yeah, a smaller bit part.
What did you do?
I was the angry promoter who chased a bus.
Amazing!
Lock the gates!
Amazing!
Yeah, that's me.
There's a few of us that are bit parts in that movie that did pretty good.
Yeah, Mitch Hedberg was in it. Nick Swartzen was in it.
That's right.
Mitch Hedberg. I don't think he had I don't know if he had a line, but he was in the poker scene.
Yes, that's right.
Nick Swartzen is the guy who went, David Bowie.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in that movie.
Hedberg's favorite of all time. I got to see him live at Just for Laughs when I was 16. That was a big one.
Oh, yeah? Was he on his game?
Yes, he fucking was.
Oh, good.
Yes, he was.
Well, yeah, he was great. And it's a weird thing about Mitch is that his stuff is so... it holds up.
Yes, it does. It's my favorite ever.
Yeah, because like it's not hinged to
no
to anything really personal. It's all observational.
Yeah, and there's nothing about it any specific era.
Yeah, it's like poetry.
Yes, yeah, it just makes sense, and it will always make sense.
Yeah, it's sad that he's gone.
Yeah.
So, but that was like one of your first movies, huh? But it was not your first gig. Obviously.
No, but it was my first job in the States.
But what was your first movie?
Well, my first gig ever. First
gig, it was a TV gig, probably.
It was. I got killed in the opening of an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, the Nickelodeon show.
Yeah, and then you just did a lot of Canadian stuff?
Yep.
As a kid?
Yeah, and then I had...
Were you ever like a teen sensation or anything in Canada? Or?
I wouldn't say that, but I was on a kids show that a lot of kids watched.
Which one?
It's called Popular Mechanics for Kids.
Uh-huh.
And it's still the thing I'm recognized most for in Canada.
Really?
Yeah. Or I mean, most people know the rest of the career and think they're being very clever by being like, "Hey, you know what I'm a fan of?
Yeah,
PMK."
Yeah,
and I'll be like, "Yeah, motherfucker, everyone says it. You know, you're the first guy."
As a child,
yeah, fuck.
You've done some other stuff.
By the way, go fuck yourself. No, but also because my ambition was to go to film school, I had thought I'd act till the work kind of dried up, and I got to that awkward stage that every kid gets to where I'm no longer cute kid and I'm not like a man, I'm just this gangly fucking idiot.
Yeah.
And I stopped getting auditions, and so I was like, okay, great, so hopefully whatever.
At what age were you? 15?
18. I was like, whatever money I have saved up, I'll go to film school, and then I'll just I'll get like a normal job.
Yeah.
And then I'll write indie scripts and hope to try and make indie films in Montreal for the rest of my life. So I was already done acting, and then I got this gig on the Judge Show, Undeclared, and well, here I am.
But you did big parts though, man. Before that, I mean, you're making it sound like everything dried up, but like the first time I think I registered you was in $1 Million Baby.
Oh, wicked! Thank you.
But that was great.
Thank you. Yeah, that's after. That's
I still get choked up when you get all beat up. Like just thinking about you getting beat up.
It's a sad one. Yeah, it's a real sad one. Yeah,
it's rough, dude.
It's a heavy.
You're just this wide open kid, and it
ended up being so much heavier, I think, than any of us necessarily bargained for.
Really, I think Clint knew it was going to be heavy.
Oh no, Clint knew the whole movie was a bummer, but I think that particular scene was a bit harder than we all anticipated.
Oh, but that was actually after Undeclared.
Yeah, that's after the sort of everything. So
everything did sort of shit the bed.
And anything that you know me from is from post Undeclared.
Really?
Most likely. Yeah.
So how did Judd find you?
Casting director for that show went to go see Almost Famous, and I guess that I resonated.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was home.
The Led Zeppelin kid.
Yeah, and I was at my mom's house. I was in my sister's bedroom playing PlayStation. The home phone rings as, "Hello, this is so-and-so from Allison Jones Casting in Los Angeles." I'm like, "Yeah." Like, "Is this Jay?" I'm like, "It is." Like, "We saw you in Almost Famous. We think you'd be great to audition for the Untitled Judd Apatow project." Yeah, fuck, what else am I doing?
And, hold on, I'm almost done with this game.
Well, I'm not, and then that's kind of how it happened.
And then that started that relationship. Yep. So you didn't know Seth or Evan or anybody before you met Judd.
That's it.
Like, there's this idea that all Canadian funny people know each other, but you don't.
Well, Canada's a very big fucking country. Vancouver's very far from Montreal.
But it's a small entertainment industry.
It is totally. But Seth wasn't in it before.
Right, that's true.
All he did was some stand-up in Vancouver.
Yeah. So, all right, so you do not Undeclared, but then all the movies come. Knocked Up, you're great in that.
Thank you.
Tropic Thunder, I think, is like one of the great underrated satirical masterpieces.
I think so, too. I think history will be very kind to it. I think what has to happen... I mean, it's not that people hate the movie. Already quite a good amount of goodwill for it, but...
It's a deep movie. I think it gets overlooked as deep as it was.
Precisely, and I think what's going to happen to it will be the Blade Runner Scarface thing, where once the kids that were 10 when that movie came out go to film school and analyze it, then we'll have a cult of appreciation truly for it.
Yeah, it's a real smart movie.
It really fucking is.
You know?
And we knew it. Like, I remember Nolte saying to me, he's like, this is going to be like Strangelove. And I was like, you're fucking right, man. It really could be. And that's like a lofty thing to compare. And I'm sure I'll get a lot
Ben
of hate
would
for
love to
saying
hear that.
But I honestly think history will regard it, I don't know about as kindly as Strangelove, but in that vein.
Well, I've watched it several times, and after seeing, because like the stuff that like oddly that pops out as as for me outside of the war stuff was the celebrity stuff.
Yeah,
I mean that stuff.
Scathing.
It's scathing, but it's deep.
Yeah.
When he's like, with his like wooden Oscar and shit. I mean, it's weird shit.
It's insane and
it's weird shit.
And born of reality.
Yeah, and Downey is great.
Yes. And what's amazing is, so obviously we were all very well versed in talking points about that. Like, we were just like, this is going to be an issue. So
yeah,
what none of us anticipated that was the real issue, because that didn't seem to trigger a negative reaction. What did was the full retard run.
That's what got more attention
Big
than
time.
the racial issue.
Big time. We had protesters at the premiere and stuff. And I was like, I understand, and it's not for me to tell people from another community that they have no right to be offended by something. That's not my place. But I was also at the same time like, I get it, but you're not necessarily reacting to the point of the scene.
That's right. Yeah, well, that happens.
Yeah, it does. It does.
People have to make their stand to make their to get their territory.
And also, by the way, I get it. Like,
it is righteous.
That's
fight.
It. And if that's the price you pay for being on the right side of things, is that every once in a while you throw the baby out with the bathwater, or you attack someone that isn't the right target.
Right.
That's a small price to pay, because out there they're
bigger
banging.
Point.
Yes, they're banging the right drum.
Right.
But it was like a bummer, and none of us were ready for it.
Right. So throughout the Judd movies, like how many did you do? You did Knocked Up.
That
was it.
Yeah, just Undeclared and Knocked Up, and then.
But you became friends with Seth and Evan.
Yeah, I've known Seth and Evan since I was 18, since we did Undeclared together, and like when I'd go to Vancouver, I'd stay at his parents' house and all that stuff. And
really?
Only time I ever snowboarded, I was wearing Evan's snowsuit, and and then we did This Is the End together.
Well, that's a good movie too.
Thank you.
I liked it. I
agree.
I thought that
much better than it had any business being. It's amazing.
Another sort of scathing indictment of celebrity.
I think so. And I think, but one that makes a lot of sense as a story.
Yeah.
Like, it actually structurally is a pretty strong thing. And it's, what I like is it has an energy to it that's kind of its own thing. I find
it does. And the effects at the end, Satan was good.
It's really its own animal.
Yeah, it is. It is an odd movie.
And it has like a bit of Fellini in its DNA.
Yeah.
And I think, I was just happy that it was definitive, because my biggest criticism of comedy cinema in the past 10 years is that it's the same movie.
Yeah.
The same font on the titles.
Yeah.
Everything's lit the same. The wardrobe is the same. It's all just 4 shots. The one bit of the take where they weren't talking over each other and the ad-libs were okay.
Right.
Like, they're all movies of 4 shots.
Yeah.
You could fall asleep to one on a plane and wake up in the middle of another one, and you would think it's the same fucking movie.
No, it's true.
And This Is the End, to me, feels like I'm not going to embarrass them and call them auteurs, but it's like a definitive intended bit of cinema.
No, I think so. And I think that those guys have, that crew, Jonah and you and Seth and Evan, they kind of, and Judd specifically, kind of created a new tone for just comedy in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Judd gets, a certain amount of criticism for the types of people that he seems to be capturing, but in terms of just the language of the timing and everything,
and the vibe, and it's a shared process that him and Ben Stiller both have, because they came up together in the Ben Stiller Show.
Yeah,
and it was a neat thing for me to compare the set of Tropic Thunder to like Undeclared or Knocked Up, and to see where it came from. The same place.
You want to go into that a little bit?
No, I saw where it was similar, but neat to see where they differed.
Yeah. I think one of them runs a set differently.
Yeah, slightly. All right.
But now let's talk about your relationship and the Canadians' relationship with hockey, because I didn't see the first Goon movie, but I watched the new one.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fucking right. Thank you.
It's not awkward. I mean, like I don't.
No, I didn't expect you to have seen number 2. So that's
they
awesome.
sent me a screener.
Awesome.
And the one thing that I started to do, because I don't know hockey, and I'm not a sports guy in general.
Gotcha.
Though I did learn how to skate when I was a kid. We lived in Alaska for a couple of years.
Oh,
so
really?
I had a stick.
Awesome.
I had hockey skates.
Oh, very cool.
I went to the ring. I could skate around a bit, but I never really knew how to play. I was never on a team or anything.
Well, you just called it a ring, not a rink. So
rink, yeah.
That's pretty.
A boxing ring. Right? Well, it's similar in your movie.
Yes.
The ring and the rink.
Yes. One and the same. Shared geography.
That's right.
Yeah.
But like when I was watching it with my girlfriend, I'm like, are these like, because the idea of the enforcers, getting washed up and having to do these shows.
Yeah.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah. So that is,
because it's like comedy.
It's fucked up. It's so that our version of it is like a bit kind of enhanced movie version of a very real, very sad thing that only ever happened once. Is this thing called the Black and Blue Hockey Enforcers Tournament.
Yeah.
And there's the footage of the tournament itself is a bummer. The documentary about them making it is very interesting because you see them go from town to town in Canada, and every city council is like, we don't want this. We don't want to just see two guys beat each other up in skates.
In hockey outfit,
but not play hockey at all.
Right.
And then eventually Prince George, BC was fine with it. And when you see the behind the scenes things of all these guys who are like 5 years out from actually having been on a team.
Yeah.
And the checks are bouncing, and they're having to go chase the promoter down and be like, wait, this is not what we negotiated.
So it's like wrestling.
Yeah.
And it's like...
But it's real, and they're actually fucking hitting each other as hard as they can. And like, don't get me wrong. I am someone that...
Well, I have to step in here and go, the guys who wrestle get hurt, but go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, you're right. But they... Let me put it... Yeah.
It is choreographed.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
every one of those guys know who wins that fight.
Yeah.
In this case, they just beat each other up until it's over.
Ugh.
And and this bare knuckle, and they're just squaring off.
So this was a real thing. That the opening thing, like, because I know hockey's a sport, and I knew what was being captured there were these washed up fighters, hockey fighters who are now just doing that.
Yeah, some
like
of them,
it seemed like it wasn't fabricated. Like it
has to be born of something real. Now the kind of battle royale 10 guys at once thing,
that was it.
That's our bit of movie flourish.
Right.
But that's still the heart and spirit of that idea is the real thing of this like incredibly ridiculous, over the top, sad thing to see. And it's like, we thought it connected perfectly to the overall theme of the whole movie, which is that evolution versus extinction.
Yeah.
When you define yourself solely by what you do, and especially if what you do is very finite and hurts you, and you're going to have to say goodbye to it, you're faced with a very important, fundamental, profound ultimatum. Do I evolve and embrace this next part of my life?
Yeah.
Or do I stay there trying to hold on to what I used to have?
Yeah.
And you pay a price if that happens, I think.
Well, yeah, and now in professional football, we're really seeing that, most of these guys are like, we might all have this. Yeah. This brain damage.
Well, they're running right into each other. It was bound to be.
And in those sports like hockey and football, and I imagine, well, not soccer, but there's got to be other sports where people get horrendous.
Actually, and what's so weird is they're finding it in even the soft sports, like even soccer. They're seeing it's all because no one was charting head trauma and concussions until like 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Right, and they were fighting, and they fought that.
Yes, they did. It's a
good movie. That concussion movie.
Is it? I haven't seen it.
It's good.
Tell the truth.
Yeah.
Tell the truth. That one? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll see it. It's
good on historical, because I know about it.
Yeah, right. It's an important thing for people to know.
Yeah.
And I think it's better for people to have the most information they have. I think the difference is when people start proselytizing and condemning, and I think it's more about give everyone, fans, players, everyone, the appropriate info, and let them as consenting adults decide what they want to do with their lives.
Right. So after the success of the first Goon movie, which you wrote, you didn't direct, and you've been a lifelong hockey fan.
Yes, sir.
That goes with your national pride, I imagine.
That's
and the sport.
And being my dad's son.
He's a big hockey fan?
He was the biggest.
But it was a surprise success. The first movie, it built a cult following among the players and among.
So in the States, it's in the Boondock Saints, Donnie Darko cult category.
Yeah.
Back home, it's just a bona fide success because we opened at #1 across the country. I can't tell you another time in my life where an English Canadian movie was #1 and an American picture was #2.
Yeah.
And it happened on Goon that weekend.
Right.
And then we also, in the UK, we're like one of the highest, if not the highest grossing Canadian film in UK box office history.
Yeah.
And so we have these three awesome kind of fan bases. In Canada, Canadians feel like we finally just named the elephant in the room and gave them the movie that they've been waiting for.
Yeah.
In the UK, it's this weird thing that everybody thought they would hate.
Yeah.
But then we're like, oh yeah, no, the UK has got the biggest, oldest fight culture in the world. Of course they like this movie.
Sure.
And then for Americans, this really neat thing happened where in the States, hockey is like a black sheep, third tier, fourth tier sport.
Right.
And so the people that are
really into it,
that sort of otherness, underdog thing becomes part of it. So when a fucking movie that's like ramshackle and blue collar and kind of handmade like ours comes, it just dovetailed perfectly with how they felt already, and it was like someone made a movie for them. So it was kind of a really neat thing.
Well, the thing that I found in watching it was like, once the story kind of found its groove, I mean, I knew where it was going, but not in a predictable way. Cool. But you're like, is that guy going to come back? And he's so funny, that Sean William Scott.
He's amazing.
Because like he plays a doofus.
Yes, he does. Yeah, he's not a very bright man.
And then you got Liev Schreiber out of nowhere, who just acts the shit out of that guy.
Yes, he does. And
like I couldn't believe it because like as a comic, I know the old guys,
right.
In any profession, the guys who are
salty dogs,
right, and almost over.
Yep.
And like right when he hits the screen, you're like, damn,
he got the vibe, right?
He's a real character.
Yes, he is. No, and. We were so lucky. We were spoilt for riches on the cast in both films, and
T.J. Miller had a little part in there.
Yes, that's right. That's
Alison Pill was genius. She's very funny.
She is. That was an awkward one, just purely because her and I used to live together. But
kept it professional.
But it was such her and I are both such like hard.
Is she Canadian?
She is.
Oh.
We're both very hokey, hard on our sleeve artists that we're not trying to like hang out. But when it was apparent that we were going to make another one of these, there wasn't a moment's hesitation on either end about whether or not we should do it.
Right.
Because we both wanted to and knew the movie would be good and it was the right thing to do. So, but she fucking kills it. And I think Alicia Cuthbert as her sister is on fire in that movie.
It's funny.
Think.
Like even as like a non-Canadian, like having worked in Boston, and like there's a certain tone.
Yes.
To
it's called white trash.
Yeah. Well, they don't like that, but
I'm allowed to say it.
Okay. Working class, foibles.
That's it. Yeah.
And caricatures. But it was sort of familiar to me. But let me understand it. So in hockey, there are guys that were hired onto teams that may not necessarily be great players, but were great fighters.
Yeah, and it's that era is drawing to a close.
Is that sad?
For a lot of people, yes. I mean, it's a hard one. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, Google the hockey fighting debate.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is all of the people that are against fighting is a minority of people for the most part. It's usually writers. None of the players really seem to have an issue with it. Every time there's an informal poll about whether or not the NHL should ban it, the players vote overwhelmingly in favor of keeping it.
Right.
And watch any fucking hockey game where two guys drop the gloves. Find me the guy sitting in the audience. Like
saying like, oh no.
There's like maybe 3 of them. Overwhelmingly, we appreciate it and understand it and feel connected to it. Now, I also can't take away and dispute any of the reasons people don't like it. And fine. Society has decided it's time for it to go. Which is why there's a bit of melancholy romance in all of Last of the Enforcers. We named it Last of the Enforcers for a reason.
Right.
Because it's a bygone era. He's meant to be the last of the gunslingers.
How's it doing up in Canada? It opened already.
Yes, it did. And it's been such a amazing, lovely connection. Like, people own that movie.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to describe to someone who isn't from there, because it's the only country in the world where we don't see ourselves reflected in our cinema.
Uh-huh. Oh, really?
All of our cinema's American.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, but there's who's that great Armenian director up there?
Oh yeah, no, Adam Agoyan's amazing.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, how many of his movies connect to the average guy in Calgary?
I guess. Well, that's true. I guess there aren't the comedies that would define.
That's the point. In the States, in England, in Australia, I think it's taken for granted that you flip on the television or go to the movies, you'll see a movie that takes place in your country.
Right.
We don't ever have that.
That's interesting.
It has repercussions.
Uh-huh.
So for us to do these, because I also believe there's no such thing as prohibitively Canadian. That this movie is not alien to Americans.
No, I got it.
Yes, you didn't see a Nova Scotia license plate. Like, what the fuck is
Where
this?
am I?
Like,
what planet is
throw
this?
the remote out the window. No.
But I never thought about it. Obviously, I wouldn't have put that much thought into it as you did.
No.
But I don't know that I could identify outside of performing in different parts of Canada.
Right.
What the social structure is, what our version of those kind of like characters are.
So that's it. And so we made movies where people hear people that sound like them and look like them. And let me tell you, when we did one of the screenings in Calgary, which is a very important one for me, because I said often, we didn't make this movie for Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. We made it for Calgary, Hamilton, Winnipeg, Halifax. We made it for all the small towns.
Yeah.
And we did a screening in Calgary, best fucking audience. One of my proudest moments. I'm going to start crying. And this kid came up to me afterwards in the Highlanders jersey. And you got to remember, I came up with these teams, man. I invented this shit. So with Evan, but I'm the one that came up with all the team names. And so when I see people tattooing that shit on them or wearing that jersey, it's a fucking huge deal.
Yeah.
And this kid came up to me and he said, Jay, thank you for this movie. Not Last of the Enforcers. He said, Goon was my favorite film. And since that movie's come out, I've gotten married and I'm a new father.
Yeah.
And now you made this movie, and it's like my life is tracking in these two movies, and that kid doesn't really get that very fucking often, right? And so that was a pretty big one for me.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
I've actually been to Calgary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked in Calgary.
Nicest fucking people.
And I've been to Winnipeg.
Yeah, that's where we did the first one.
That city's pretty beat up.
It's a hard town. It's a hard town.
Yeah.
It's often the murder capital of the country.
Is that true?
We call it Murder Peg. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's just, but the actual city looks like the weather beats the shit out of it every year.
It's the windiest part of North America.
Yeah, I was showed that corner twice.
Portage and Maine. Yeah, it fucking sucks.
Yeah.
It's just you're in the center of this, like the apex of a storm. It's awful. It's so
and the
so
streets
cold.
are cracked.
Cold as shit.
Yeah.
But fucking lovely people in that town, salt of the earth people.
Yeah.
And I will say this, strangely, because I didn't expect this, amazing food. And not just like greasy spoon good food, like sushi, steak, 4-star stuff. Like, they really have a strange and a very important arts community.
Yeah, there's a highbrow culture there.
Is,
I mean,
there
I definitely noticed that when I went.
And they've given the world a lot of good punk rock as well.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, Canada's given the world a lot of good actors, a lot of funny people.
Yep.
I mean, but the experience of directing, this was the first time that you really took it on?
Yeah, aside
How do you
from
feel about it?
An episode of Trailer Park Boys, pretty much. Yeah, I directed one of those.
There's a Canadian thing that is uniquely Canadian.
Those are my boys, and they opened the door for us. I've said it in many interviews. There's no Goon without Trailer Park Boys. They built an infrastructure that allowed us to make that movie. And
did you ever watch Slapshot?
Of course, of course. But I'm not my dad, and that's definitely for like. There's a bit of a culture generation gap.
Sure,
there's a bit of a generation.
But there
gap.
is a theme there,
big time. Big time. No, we're the heir apparent. 100%. For being crass and vulgar and having that fighting spirit, and but
There's
no,
some really funny scenes in your movie.
Thank you very much.
The characters are very good.
Thank you. Oh, that's nice of you to say. Yeah, directing is all I've ever wanted to do since I was 9, and it was the greatest thing I've ever been a part of.
And are you looking to do more?
Yes, that's all that I'm interested in. I'm like, if I'll be lucky if some awesome acting gig finds me, then that's that. But my attentions are all in trying to get this horror movie, Random Acts of Violence, going, which I might even be able to shoot this fall, as well as the comic book stuff, which is like I bought 20% of a comic book company, and I'm the chief creative officer, as well as writing titles for them. And so
a Canadian comic book company?
Called Chapter House. And I'm surrounded in my house by movies and comics anyway, and now I have something to do with a bunch of them, and it's really cool.
Oh, that's great.
I love it.
I was just going through my storage unit, and I went through like maybe a 2-year window of comic book interest.
Yeah.
I was never brought up with it, but there was a 2-year where. And like I've got all the Hellblazers and Sandmen.
Oh, Hellblazer's a hell of a book.
Oh yeah, man.
Great
I was there at
books.
the beginning, and
Great
I'm like,
books.
I can relate to this guy. That's how far out I was.
Great.
Him and I have something in
that
common.
you felt allied with John Constantine.
Yes. Yeah, I'm like, this is my guy.
Yeah, that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes.
I'm better now. I reeled it in.
Than the burnt-out supernatural Sting.
Yeah. I reeled exactly. I reeled in the belief in manipulating beyond my means.
That's right. Well said.
But the directing thing. Now, when you did it, how did you sort of do it? Because I had some experience. Just I've done a couple of things. I directed a couple episodes of my show.
Right, of course.
But like you got to have a good DP. And
Yes.
You got to have, but you spent a lot of time on sets. I mean, you've worked with Clint Eastwood. You've worked with Stiller. You work with Apatow. You work with other big directors.
That's it. And like I said, it was always film school. I was never passive, man. I was never just there. I was always not only observing and being a sponge. I was also always picking the brain of whoever would let me.
Right.
And I made the most of all of that. And I was very fortunate. Like, Stiller was so bloody kind to me.
Yeah.
And it's not like he didn't have enough shit to worry about on that movie.
Yeah.
But he would always take time when he was lining up shots on the mini monitor to explain the composition of the frame, where the choppers were coming in and where this is going to go, where the camera goes. And he knew that I would dig that.
Yeah.
And he knew that that's what I
That's
wanted
nice.
to do. Yeah. And I got to work with George Miller in Australia for 2 weeks on a movie that never happened. And had it happened, he said to me, he's like, I know I want you here every day because I know you have an interest in cinema, and I want you to shadow me like Mel did on Thunderdome.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that's one of the great apprenticeships in the world.
And it didn't happen?
It didn't happen. But I also got to be on set and watch David Cronenberg do his thing. And I got to watch
he's a great Canadian director.
Yes, he fucking is. He's like my hero.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
What was that one I just watched again? Did he do History of Violence?
Yes, of course he did.
Oof.
Amazing flick.
It is an
Amazing flick.
And I
Dope
never
flick.
read the graphic novel.
Me neither. And I think it unfolds in such an awesome way.
Scanners.
Yes, dope.
What's the one-
Videodrome.
Videodrome. But what's the weird one about the obstetrician?
Dead Ringers.
Dead Ringers, Jeremy Irons?
Great flick.
That's based on a kind of a true
Yeah,
story.
I know. Geneviève Bujold as well. Yeah, I know. That is. Isn't that fucking gross?
Oh, man.
Isn't that fucking weird?
Yeah.
The Fly. I mean,
Yeah.
and I got to be in one. I got to be in a movie called Cosmopolis. And so I got to be on set with him for 2 days. And I got to watch him do his thing. And I'd have just asked to be a guest on that set anyway. I would have just stood at the
He's
wall.
very specific and very deliberate and stylized.
He is. And also, what's so neat is, in my opinion, the two greatest directors I've ever had the pleasure of working for on set are Clint Eastwood and David Cronenberg.
Right.
And the two of them have the exact same set.
Really?
Yeah. And what I mean is...
Not too many shots?
Not too many shots, not too many takes. Everyone's in a lovely mood. It's all an incredibly light on your shoulders.
And they know what they
atmosphere.
want.
They know what they want. They've hired the people that they want.
Yeah.
And they all, the crews all say the same thing, though. It's great. It's lovely. We move. You just don't want to be the guy that fucks it up. But what's amazing is, I think I did a total of, maybe 4 takes of each shot on Cosmopolis. He has the same sense of confidence and knowing the movie he wants to make as Clint did. Where, that first day on set on $1 Million Baby, I was stressed as shit. And after every take, I said, Mr. Eastwood, was that all right? And he'd say, it was fine. And I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
I could already chest move him telling the producer, who's this kid?
Why does he keep bothering me?
Who else auditioned? And then Morgan Freeman saw me nervous.
Yeah.
And he leaned over. He's like, psst, if he doesn't say anything, it means he likes it. And what that afforded me was this, huge career light bulb moment where I was like, oh, yeah. What difference does it make how I feel about it?
Right.
I'm not the director.
Yeah.
If he got what he needs for the purpose of his story,
Yeah.
fuck, then I'm done.
But you don't have those moments where you're like, I could have done that better?
Not often.
Well, that's good.
And maybe I'm just an asshole.
No.
But
No.
I just because if I didn't, we'd still be shooting.
Right.
And I just believe, I tried it because I think that with artsy stuff, you can flower it up too much and get lost in theory. And you've got to remember it's still a craft. And I'm digging a ditch. And if
Yeah.
I'm digging the ditch that my supervisor asked me to dig,
Yeah.
then
And he thinks the ditch is done, you're
fuck,
good.
then it's not for me to be like, this looks like shit. You know,
Right,
no.
right.
And I swear that I've, since that day on $1 Million Baby, I think maybe I've asked for another take maybe twice.
But then you work with directors like Judd who likes to improvise,
Yep.
so that's a whole other animal.
It is completely. And that's now there are also different versions of that ad lib atmosphere.
Yeah.
There are some where it's, comedic Darwinism, where
Yeah.
it's there is a slight soupçon of adversarial nature pissing contest to it.
Yeah.
And then you have what I like is the vibe that my actors had on both Goon movies, which is they really, it's going to sound hokey, but they did take a vibe to it, which was in the pissing contest, it's how can I be the funniest guy in this scene?
Right.
On Goon with those boys, it was how I want the guy next to me to look as good as he can. I'm setting him up.
And also stay within character, because a lot of times in pissing contest movies, you can feel that they've departed from story and character.
And they don't give a shit. And
Right.
it's like having a guitar solo in every fucking song.
And that's sort of what you were talking about earlier about that kind of feeds some of the redundancy.
Yes, it fucking does, man. And then it's like, who are you doing this for?
Right.
You're a tool and a servant and a steward of the story. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I saw you on, I watched you, I was just sitting around trying to avoid the world, and I watched you on Kimmel last night.
Oh, yeah.
And you were talking about food. Do you think that place where he had the moose heart was a pied de cochon?
It definitely was. Well done, my man. It had to have been.
Right, because I go to that place.
Yeah.
Not as much anymore since I've got the high cholesterol.
Yeah.
But that place is insane.
It'll
And
fucking kill you,
Yeah,
man.
when he said a moose heart with maple syrup,
I was like, I knew it was
to be
one of three places.
Oh,
and
my
I was
God,
like, it had
that's
to be
Canadian.
it had to be au pied de cochon.
au pied de cochon.
Yeah.
I've had some good shit there. That foie gras on the buckwheat pancake with the cheese.
I've never eaten there. That's a bit rich for my blood.
Look, working class guy.